carrying on with the theme on the reform agenda, when the Education, Children and Young People Committee heard from the Chief Executive of the SQA recently, we learned that many of the existing SQA staff were going to be represented on the various programme and delivery boards created to drive forward much-needed educational reform. So how can we expect meaningful transformation change to actually take place when it's the same people charged with designing the replacement bodies for the SQA and Education Scotland who are so heavily invested in perhaps some could say defending current ways of working?
First Minister.
I think, again, there is always a really tricky balance to strike here between trying to reform and do things better, which is the purpose of the programme of reform that you're asking me about right now, but also making sure that we don't lose the expertise and the skills and the learning and the knowledge that often has built up over a long period of time. And I think it is right and proper that we harness that as we take forward this reform agenda. But of course there'll be, not least from your committee and the Parliament as a whole, there'll be a lot of scrutiny on that. That's going to be legislation and require legislation, and there'll be a lot of scrutiny on that and the wider policy to make sure, I hope, that we're getting the balance of that right.
Sue Webber.
In part of that reform to the education, the Scottish Government has also launched its national discussion on education, designed to seek the views from children and young people between the ages of 3 and 18. However, bodies like the SQA have been heavily criticised in the past, as their attempts to include young people in decision-making process have led to disappointing experiences for our young people and those that were involved. What reassurance can you provide that the children and young people's views will actually contribute to the educational reforms in a meaningful way? And how will you ensure that it's a positive experience for children and young people and that they receive clear feedback as to what they have fed in and how it is contributing to that reform agenda?
First Minister.
I mean, the national discussion, I know I'm telling you things you know here because your committee is very intimately interested in this. The national discussion is co-convened by the Scottish Government and COSLA. I think the Cabinet Secretary has already met with education spokespeople from all different parties, inviting on that cross-party basis input and contribution, and is intending to encourage all MSPs to take part in that. The voice of children and young people is designed to be and will be at the heart of that. That was one of when Ken Muir made the recommendation for a national discussion, that was one of the key factors, that young people had to be at the heart of that. There will always be, in any process like this, there will always be individuals or particular interests who understandably feel that their views are not properly being taken into account because they perhaps disagree with the direction of travel. But this will be an effort to ensure that those who are essential to building the vision for the future of Scottish education have the opportunity to make a full contribution. There's going to be a lot of high-profile public engagement activity, trying to ensure as wide-ranging participation as possible.